Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Welcome, Holy Spirit, to this cool conversation in Portugal, and just welcome you in as we talk about creativity and art and being in Portugal and all these wonderful things. We just want to do it in your presence. So, Mr. Lewis, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So, we have to tell the audience, the first time you were on, you had the honor of a couple things. And now you have the honor again today. So the first time you were on, what were the honors that were bestowed upon you?
Well, I got to get a free pass at making the Core 80 composition course, and it was about a month of an intense composition course in painting that I did online, and it basically changed my way of looking at art everywhere. I immediately started to notice all those differences. I was, even with colleagues of mine, even though they had very different works from mine, I was able to critique them, more honestly and not be too closed-minded on my own personal tastes, which was great. And it helped me to start off home on my other pictures, other images. I don't know, I felt like I was able to transmit better, what my messages were. So that was one of the best decisions I made to make that course.
Yeah, and you were faithful to it, man. You went through it, you did it. And just for anyone who's listening now, I gifted that to you almost 2 years ago. And, but now I'm at a place where I've just come to this place where I'm like, you know what? I want as many artists. My goal is to hit 1 million people, so that we can actually begin to critique each other, have conversations, honest conversations. And when I say honest, I mean honest because we actually have a common language that's effective. And specifically in this case, the language is based around design and composition. And really that's the core of your decision making when making art, outside of the decisions that you would make according to your medium. And so, so you went through that for free. Now everybody can. So just go to core80.com, hit free gift, and you'll have access to the same course and enjoy.
Yeah, but I would suggest while they're doing the course, they should really try to go to your YouTube channel, because you have a few videos that you're yourself analyzing a few paintings. Because I think that hearing you speak, because I actually think that you really have you're very good at reading composition in painting. I remember seeing a video you did on a Picasso, and Picasso was never an artist that I really ever enjoyed that much. But I was hearing you read the composition, and that was, it just gave me a whole other interest in that specific painting. And I think that people who do that course really should try and see someone speak about composition before they get into the exercises.
Awesome. Well, so for that, if you're in, when you log in, if you go down to, there's a place called the resource library or the library all the way at the bottom. I took all those videos that you're talking about and I put them there. So they're actually all part of the course. And then there's also, since we've talked, I've authored 2 books, and so you get actually access to downloadable versions of those in that course as well. So that's very, very cool. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's interesting when you start getting really into the composition design of the art, it allows you to appreciate other styles of art that you normally may kind of shy away from because, it's just not really what you're interested in. What kind of work did you, besides, you said Picasso, but was there any other kind of styles or work that isn't really your cup of tea, as they say, but that you can?
But Picasso, no,
Picasso.
never really. I don't know. It never really meant that much to me. Maybe primarily because of that visual aspect,
Mm-hmm.
but. Uh, but just hearing you talk about that composition, the painting was, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a rape scene.
Yes,
It was a
that
rape
was
scene.
intense, right?
Yeah, and you actually, and yeah, and you were comparing that painting with another one, which was a more classical type, but it was the opposite. It was a couple,
like holding each other or something like that, right?
yeah, and you were comparing them both, and that whole Picasso thing, the way you were reading the geometry and the way it made, a person's vision go back and forth, kind of like that motion, that aggressiveness. That alone, I found really, really fantastic. Even though I don't really appreciate the visual aspect of it, just that thing about the composition just really intrigued me.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So, Louis, what are you working on now? What are you currently working on in your studio?
Well, more this past year, I started to focus a lot more on portraiture, painting people, painting faces. And the thing that really changed the most for me was painting from life. I'd already had painted from life because I was one of the requisites, in the faculty. But a few years on the line, you get, you start to choose to make things easier. So you started taking photographs, you do montages, and you paint through the photograph and you have the outline, you paint inside the outline, that kind of stuff. But when I started to really focus on painting from life, everything was so different. It was so different because, well, firstly, you have no idea how much color you can see with your own eyes and how much photography manipulates color. When I paint through photography, all the colors are muddy or grayish, and there isn't that much tonal variety. And with faces, human faces, you have so much color that you get blown away when you start putting it from life. It's absolutely mind blowing. And the other thing is the big picture. You see, because when you have a high quality photograph, you have a tendency to get all the little details there, every little thing there. But when you paint from life, you have just a short time to paint what you're seeing. So you really have to stay focused and paint what really matters. There are a lot of details that you really don't need in a painting. You can just solve a face with a few brushstrokes, and when you look at it, you can really see a realistic face or something. So it's completely different. And that last self-portrait that I posted, I was telling you that it's about the size of my hand. There's actually a reason for me to paint a small scale, because in a small scale, I can't really do that much detail. And in oil painting, it's really easy to for the paint to get filthy, to get muddy. And so you really have to be smart about it. You need to absorb to watch things carefully and see what information is useful to you.
I'm going to go ahead and use that painting you did, that small painting, that self-portrait, as the art for the cover picture for this podcast. Because when I saw that, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, something like that, I was like, dang, man. Like, I don't know what you've been eating, but you jumped a couple levels.
Thanks. No, but I personally really liked it because it's much more simple, and I think in the last works that I did, that one was where the color was the best. I don't know. It's still, to me, it still looks natural, but it's still a saturated color, and you can understand that it's a painting. You know, that's what I enjoy the most.
Yeah, it's not. You're not looking at it and saying, "Oh, that's a photograph." You know, it is. What I love about it. It is a representation, obviously, but an interpretation of your reflection on yourself. Right? It's not. It's not you trying to copy a photo. It's not you even trying to copy your own look. You know, it's very painterly, and you're thinking like an artist, not like a copier. And
yeah, exactly. With portraiture, I came to realize that what matters the most is you trying to, capture a person's expression. Because there were a lot of works where I was a lot more careful with the drawing and the anatomy about. I still am because what I like is realism and naturalism, but there were works where I was extremely careful, and people would look at it and they say, "Yeah, I'm not sure that there's something there that's not real. I don't know. It looks fine, but I don't know. I just don't see the person there."
Yep.
You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And I don't know. And the good thing about painting from life is that you have a physical connection with the person you're painting. You're actually interacting with them. You're getting to know them, and that's a huge key to achieve a good portrait.
And that's it. It's getting that animation, that spirit, that soul of the person into the work. And I remember my drawing master used to say that when you're able to capture this shift that goes on, what happens is when the viewer sees it, you actually help them shift, like move through time, and that moving through time makes the thing come alive, right? So, if you're just looking at a photo, it's just this captured moment, this still moment. But if you're looking at a live model, then they're gonna be these little adjustments, these little movements that they make, right? Or the way that they blink, or the way that they're breathing, the way, all of this life that's going on that you're
because they're not standing still. They're standing still, but they're not really standing still. They move a bit. It's like with my self-portraits. I'm looking at my reflection. I'm going back to the painting. I'm looking at my reflection, going back to. I'm always moving. So when you're actually thinking that you're capturing a frame or a split second, no, it's actually. It's what's the word in English? It's a group of motions, all together in one picture.
Yep. It's funny. I watched a show called Outlander. So season 5 just started this week, and they were having this wedding, and I was like, oh, nobody has any cell phones, right? It takes place in like a couple, like right before the Revolutionary War in the United States. So of course nobody had cell phone. They didn't even have cameras then, right? So and I'm like, how are people supposed to remember this? And I'm like, oh wait, that's why we have brains, right? Like, you actually had to remember your memory, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess you could go write them down, but so when you're looking at a live model or yourself or whatever, but like working live like that, you're actually having to use your brain to remember what you just saw while you turn back to your canvas, right?
Oh yeah, for a very split second.
Yeah, and so it's like, so the mind of an artist who works from life is, it has to be very, very different and trained differently than one who relies on a photo, because you always know it's going to be exactly where it was, and you're just
Yeah, and then it depends a bit where you're working, because you can either get the person to be in your studio, or you can take a step further and go to an environment where they're actually where they're feeling natural. And
mm-hmm,
then you have a lot of circumstances you have to control, because you have to see where the light is better. How can you set up your easel and your palette and sit yourself comfortably for the next few hours, or a lot of stuff,
yeah,
and there's a lot of strategies and protocols, shall we say, that the painter has to think about before he even starts the painting. I take about, I don't know, about 20 to 30 minutes just to get things ready
mm,
before the painting actually starts. And then the hardest part is in the beginning. You're trying to imagine how the person is going to be placed on the canvas. I don't know. It's different. It's different.
yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. Do you have models that you work with on a regular basis, or is it primarily using yourself?
I primarily use myself because that way I always have a face available to paint whenever I need to. But I what I like to do is paint people. I need
Yeah.
to go search other people and paint them. Normally, it's people who are close to me, either family, friends, or colleagues, that kind of stuff.
Cool. So when we start to see portraits of long-haired, dark-haired Portuguese women, um, that's that I'm hoping will be a model, not just you in a long wig.
Well, actually, many, if you notice about maybe José Malhoa's paintings, the guy who painted O Fado.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and all those women have very saturated colors in their faces, and that's actually pretty interesting to observe, because in those days, Portuguese women, they were always outside in the blazing sun, working on the fields, their flesh burning, and so things were a lot greedier, a lot. It changes. These days we wear a lot of skin products and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, you were much more vulnerable and exposed to everything. So it's very common to see in a few naturalistic paintings, especially outside where the light is better,
Mm-hmm.
that all the colors in the face are just beautiful and
Mm.
much easier to capture.
Wow, that's something I would have never thought about. That we're probably like much more gray and pale now because we spend so much time inside than
Exactly.
being
And
nicely toasted.
yeah, and light temperature, that's also a huge factor. You have cooler and warmer tones.
Mm-hmm.
The light outside is much it gives you a lot more color than inside. I notice a difference between painting myself with the natural light coming inside my studio, and the artificial light that I have inside when I paint at night.
Mm-hmm. That's that's cool. So, since you're a painter, let's talk a moment about your friend here in Porto, and tell us a little bit about him and his paint making and
Oh,
what
he's
you're
he's,
doing.
he's not from Porto. He's not from Porto. He's from Moreira de Cónegos. It's a small town close to Guimarães. But he produces. He makes his own traditionally handmade oil paints. He sells them across the country and even international. I know that he sells from to outside the country, I think.
And so you're
I
saying that
met
he
him.
actually makes
Yeah,
paint
yeah,
like by hand.
yeah. He was what's the word? A restorer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He restored
Hmm.
artworks. And about a few years ago, he started to produce his own oil materials. I met him about a year ago through an artist friend of mine, Rafael Oliveira. I don't know if you have his Facebook or something.
Is he the one
And
from Brazil?
no. He's from Guimarães actually, and he called me up and some other artist friends of ours,
Hmm.
and we all did Lionel's workshop because he does oil painting workshops to help promote his stuff. And since then, the first one of the first things that I started using by him were his oil mediums, linseed oil or turpentine. And no, I slowly started to get, because I know I wasn't going to buy everything at once, especially I didn't have that much knowledge about oil painting stuff. So I started from that, and then the thing that I still use today that really made a huge difference was this oil ground, because you see, um, he asks everyone individually what they're searching for their own personal work. And I told them that what I liked was realism and sort of a la prima approach, wet on wet painting technique. I needed support that didn't absorb too much, that the paint could slide well. And so he recommended his oil grinder. So I've been using it for about a year, and it changed my work completely. My brush strokes were a lot more expressive. I wasn't stuck on that insecure painting technique. From then on, I started slowly, moving forward and getting some of his paints, because his paints are in the higher series, you see, because it depends. The paints that normally students buy are a lower series. They have a lot more manipulation. While his are handmade, the pigments are a lot pure. And I noticed the difference because I started buying a few of them. I did some paintings with them, and I noticed that after it dried, the color still stayed very alive. All my other paintings, with time passing by, they start to lose a bit of saturation, but not Lionel's colors. Oh no, really. No, seriously, it's really exciting because and he also started to teach me, not just me, but a lot of people, how the materials work, and that's really important for oil painters. It's like I don't know, you have some other profession, you need to know what your materials do, how you can manipulate them, how can you ensure that your paintings don't crack over the years, how they can maintain their quality. And yeah, that's pretty much it. He sells them all over the country. Artists throughout Portugal buy his stuff. It's really great. And we all learned in the last year, we all learned a lot more from him.
So what you're saying is, because of this one man, Portugal is going to become a hotbed of classic art.
Okay, not just classic art. You can also be an enthusiast on abstract paintings or more contemporary styles. He'll help you still.
I didn't say classical. I said classic, meaning the highest quality. That's the aim, is to get this high quality, true art. Classical is more of a time period in that sense. But yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah,
Do you have friends who do more abstract art that are using his products?
That I personally know, no, but I do know that there are different types of artists that use different materials from him,
Okay,
different stuff. He also does varnishes and that kind of stuff, a lot of stuff.
that's awesome. That's so cool. Very, very cool. And how far is he from you?
About 100 kilometers, I think.
Okay, about two hours.
uh, no, not 2 hours. An hour and a half, probably.
Okay, okay, that's cool. Wow, that's kind of close for the to have that kind of resource available. Um, Very cool, man. Very cool. So, since we're talking about materials, what do you typically use for your like your canvas or your board or like what do you use?
Oh well, that depends. You know, sometimes I have canvases that I buy canvases that are already made, but I use that oil ground that I mentioned. I use
Hmm.
about a few layers of it to get that surface right. But sometimes I make my own canvases. You know, I get a wood structure
Hmm.
that's um, that's not stapled in it. That's you mount it piece by piece.
Hmm.
So 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 after when you have the painting, since the weather changes, you have a warmer climate or a colder climate, the canvas stretches and gets looser, and that
Hmm.
throughout the years makes the painting crack. So if you have a wood structure that's not stapled in, it'll adjust to the canvas. That's actually one of the basic things that I learned from him.
Oh, wow.
And I
So, what do
have
you do if you don't staple it in? How are you getting that? Is it a glue that you're using that to adhere that, or?
well, no, it's a how do I explain it? My English is uh, I'm missing the word. It's the wood structure. It comes piece by piece, and you piece them all together. You can piece them together, and you can take them off.
Uh-huh. So, so,
Uh,
so when you put the canvas around the stretcher,
yeah,
right, um, and you stretch that canvas around, but you said you're not putting the staples in there, right?
yeah. It's damn it, I'm sorry, I'm missing the word here.
Is it like a pressure? Like, are you putting the canvas inside the wood so the wood uses pressure to hold the canvas together or tight?
Damn it, no, how do I explain it? All right, well, we'll get back to that later. But when I do my own canvases, I usually use linen, more natural stuff,
Uh-huh.
and then you have to prepare it with glue. Traditionally, they would use animal based glues like rabbit skin glue,
Hmm.
but I'm not really that hardcore, and I don't really like that smell, so I just use white glue to seal the porises. And then after a few layers, I put the oil ground in. Man, it's ready to go.
Nice. That's cool. Very cool. So, what part do you personally really, really enjoy in your process? Like the prep work, like prepping for it, the actual doing, or the finishing of it?
The actual doing of it, what I like the most is starting off with a very transparent type of paint, and then gradually working my way up to to the thicker layers and the impastos. I just love that, doing it by layers, slowly forming the image. That's what I like the most. That's why I love oil painting. You have all these different types of pigments, all these different textures. The things just construct naturally. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, you have any projects planned that are coming up here that you're looking forward to doing?
Well, first I need to finish my master's degree. That's the first year I need to complete. It's going to be based on self-portraits, but incomplete self-portraits. You see, that's where the oil paint comes in form. Because I like to take advantage of those transparent paints and leave certain parts of the face incomplete. You see, and that last one you saw is a bit on that language.
Hmm. Yeah, it's it's cool, man. It's cool. I'm thinking of some artists back in the '70s that would do these illustrations that kind of had that incomplete feel to it. And uh, with your drawing style, and even with this, at least in the last one that I saw, this painting, um, it really, in my opinion, has this beautiful, like almost um, sargent-y feel to it. And it's like,
Thanks, Sergeant's one of my favorites. Thanks.
well, then you can see that his influence is there. So, um,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah, it's I was surprised. I was shocked, and not shocked that you couldn't do it. I always knew that that level was in you. It was just beautiful to see you tap into it, and it was just delightful. And it was a very strange thing because normally I appreciate the artwork, but it was this very interesting appreciation of the artwork and the artist, and just my imagination wondering what that experience was like for you, you know. And
It was a bit, I gotta confess that when I did it, I was a bit pissed off, actually.
well,
No,
there's some energy. So yeah, tell us about that. What happened?
no, well, I have this tendency to exaggerate on details. I overthink things. Sometimes I spend about 2 weeks just working on a damn portrait, and that one I did it ridiculously fast and with very little brush strokes, and it worked a lot better. And I was like, "Damn it, you giant idiot! Jesus Christ, why are you? Why don't you do this all the time?"
It's weird, right? That happens. I remember when I used to do caricatures, right? Sometimes these kids would come up and they just annoy you, and you get upset, but you couldn't get upset at them, right? So they're like, draw me, and so I would draw them, and I would be like, you know what? I'm gonna try to make this kid cry, right? I'm gonna draw the craziest, most exaggerated caricature ever, and every time I was angry at these kids, I would draw them like that. Man, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome!" I'm like, "What the?"
No, but in my case, I was mad after I'd finished it. No, I wasn't
because
mad
you did it so
during
fast.
it.
Okay,
Yeah, I was mad
gotcha.
because with very little work, it worked a lot better than many other works that I spent a lot of time and energy and always erasing and doing it again, erasing, doing it again. There are portraitures I had that I erased it about 6 or 7 times before I got it right.
Wow, wow. I love that, man. That commitment. That's cool.
Yeah, but it's torture. It's torture.
Of course it is. That's why you have to love it. Because if you don't, it's crazy.
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, very very cool, man. Well, I'm going to call this conversation a little short. So before we close up here, my friend, I'm kind of curious. Tell me something in the last 2 years that you've enjoyed eating.
Eating.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. First of all, King Louis,
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question: do you eat in your studio or do you not? Like, what's your
Sometimes that depends. Normally, when I eat in my studio, it's just in the middle of the afternoon where I need to eat some lunch. But I most of the times I kind of like to. Oh, by the way, my studio is just my old childhood bedroom in my house, so I just. It's a small studio. It's not a huge romanticized artist studio. It's just a very simple, small thing. Um, I like to go downstairs and just get my mind off my work just temporarily, just a few minutes, so I don't get saturated and tired of looking always at the same thing. We all have these little routines that help us to focus.
So on a typical day, what is it that you what's your go-to food that you like to eat when you come out of the studio and you just for that little break?
I don't know if you have a word for it in English, but here in Portugal we call it a galão.
Describe.
It's coffee with milk with sugar.
Oh yeah, we call it café con leche. We call it a cup of coffee with milk and sugar. That's what we call it here.
I drink that and a few toasts.
Nice. Anything on your toast?
Just butter. I'm a simple guy.
I miss the tosta mista.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I'm not sure what I want to eat first when I get back to Portugal. Pasta nata or the tosta mista. But but see, the problem is I don't. For the last like almost 2 months, I don't eat cheese with meat anymore, and so
cheese with meat. You put those two together.
Well, that's what's on the tosta mista is the cheese and the ham. The queso.
The ham. All right. No, when you said meat, I started to imagine a pork chop with cheese or something like that.
but it's crazy because like in the United States, you want to go out and it's like, oh, burger with cheese or this with cheese. It's like,
in here, but here in Portugal, we have a lot of cuisine that's very rich in potatoes and meat and beans, all that stuff that's really bad for you.
Do you enjoy the what is it called, the kale soup?
Kale? Oh no.
You don't
anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very picky eater. I eat very little. People are always scared that I'm gonna die because I eat very little.
So the thing that you eat the most is ice cubes and air.
No, that's not exaggerated. No, that's just breakfast and in the middle of the afternoon because I eat vegetables every day. They have to be in soup and very hidden, but yeah, I eat them. but in very small. I eat food in a very small quantity. I was never really a person that likes to appreciate food. I just eat it because I need to survive.
Wow, I don't know what I don't know what that kind of experience is. Like
that's different.
I'm trying to think if there's anything I can relate to doing that. That's interesting, man. That's very, very cool. That's very cool. Well, my friend, fingers crossed. I would love to get to Portugal this summer for a month. And when I do,
let's meet in person.
Absolutely. And we can share some coffee and toast and
that kind of stuff. I'm really curious to see you live.
Yeah, me too. But yes, very cool. So, how do we say in Portuguese? Ata luego, right?
Até logo.
Ata logo. Did I say luego? That's a different language. I think that's Italian, isn't it? But ata logo, that's right. All right, my friend. Well, you have a good one, and I thank you for coming on the call. And just so we didn't say this in the beginning, I forgot to say this. You're the first guest to actually come back on a second time. So this is your second time on the show, and you're the first one to do that. And I think you were also the first European that I. You're just like all the first, man.
To complete the course.
And you're actually the first to say, I just eat to survive. I don't really,
No, but trust me, people do get on my head for eating very little, but that just happens naturally.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Oh, my friend, you have yourself a good one. Okay.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yep. We'll talk soon. Bye.
All right. See you, man.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlying structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.